And we welcome you to the Mike Tirico Podcast. Didn't they just say that? Here we are in December where the football matters, down to the final quarter of the season, beginning with the Thursday night game. So we take an NFL focus again this week with another one of my Football Night in America partners, Tony Dungy. You know, the show is so short. It's an hour and 6 or 7 minutes or so, less content after you take the commercials out. All the highlights, you don't get a chance to hear some of what the guys think a little more in depth. And I know a lot of folks, and I appreciate the feedback, enjoyed hearing that with Rodney. You know Tony's story, player in Pittsburgh. He was part of great defenses around so many good coaches like Bill Walsh and Denny Green, and became a terrific coach in his own right with Tampa and Indianapolis, and of course won the Super Bowl with the Colts. He has been on NBC for now over a decade in that chair, and we're going to just take a big peek around the NFL and the trends of the league too, and also with a lot of folks thinking about spread offenses. Are we ripe for college guys coming into the NFL? Tony's got great perspective on that and what makes a terrific quarterback as well. All that's coming up, so here's our conversation with Tony Dungy on the podcast this week. Well, Tony, I guess we hit everybody else, so it's your turn on the schedule here, and maybe we should say we've saved the best for last. It is great to catch up with you.
I hope that's the way you were looking at it. Yeah, no, it's great to be with you, though.
You know, Tony, we get to this point in the season, and you look up, and now we are fully 3/4 of the way through the season, and it's the final quarter of the season, and we can still see a lot of things change. But we're starting to settle into some concepts and some thoughts here. Let's start with the broad picture of scoring. Spread offenses, lots of points. That was really the theme of the first part of this season. Are you sensing that becomes more difficult to do as we get to this final quarter of the season?
I am, and I really think it's a little different than when I was coaching. I always felt like the defenses were ahead of the offenses at the beginning of the year. Then the offenses came around and you saw people start to get hot. But I think because of the off-season programs and these quarterbacks who can take their group to Duke or Arizona or whatever, and the limited amount that the defense can do in the off-season, I think the offenses start out ahead. And now we've had some of these defenses catch up a little bit. The weather gets a little bit cooler. Conditions aren't as prime. And I think some of the defenses have settled in, and now you're going to see what Mike Tomlin referred to as December football a little bit more.
And that means the ability to mix, the ability to do both. How about the running game, just philosophically? Because the running game was so often built on your guys up front, a lead blocker, those types of things. But so many of these quarterbacks now, as we start to look at the teams, have that mobility. I think of a Deshaun Watson. I think of Patrick Mahomes. Obviously what Lamar Jackson has done in Baltimore. How much does that change the equation and the difficulty for a defense to play, I want to say assignment football, but to have your run mindset up there at the line of scrimmage, but a guy who can change the whole plan by getting out of the pocket and starting to run?
No, it really is huge, and making people defend the whole thing. And you talk about great running games. I'm looking at our game Sunday night, and the Bears have, they haven't been on point the last couple of weeks. Chase Daniel has done a good job, but what they're really missing is just what you described. Mitch Trubisky putting pressure on the defense and making them defend the whole field. Chicago has run the ball really well in the first 3/4 of the season, but so much of it has been read options and Trubisky holding a defensive end or else keeping the ball himself and making an 8 to 10 yard gain when the defense collapses. So that running game for a lot of these teams now is not just, as you say, just pound it behind a fullback and make 5 yards, but it's spread people out, move people around, let the quarterback dictate some, and I think that's what defenses have had to adjust to.
You know, college football has often influenced the NFL, but we never saw the wishbone come to the NFL in any great way, shape, or form. The option come to the NFL because a lot of it, Tony, was the fear that your quarterback, who's so valuable, is going to get hit and hurt. Yet now with this spread concept of football, we are seeing more college concepts come to the NFL. Do you think this is a good thing overall for the NFL's product on the field?
I think it does make it more exciting, and it definitely brings the scoring up. And I think you're right. You saw people like Russell Wilson come in and utilize some of this college offense make a 14, 15-yard gain and slide or get down or get out of bounds. And so you're picking up yardage. You're not taking really big hits. And I think these coaches said, we can do this. We can incorporate some of this in and make defenses have to honor it, and it's going to help us score. And so it has been great to see the creativity come in and what some of these young coordinators are doing with this style.
And you were living this back in the day, when the run and shoot was going for a while there, especially with Houston. The best defensive minds in the world, the defensive coordinators and the head coaches from the defensive pedigree in the NFL, along with the best athletes playing football, the guys to the NFL level, they found a way to minimize a gimmick or a newly created offense and regulate it. I don't know if there's a sense that these spread concepts of the RPO world has been regulated yet by the NFL. Even the Wildcat, Tony, think about that. Remember when Miami got that going? Like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's going to do this.
I'll tell you what, it is different and it's difficult. And I knew if it ever came into the NFL, it would be a problem when I was still coaching. I used to do clinics, high school clinics and college clinics, and you'd open it up for questions, and they would say, well, how do you defend this? What do you do if the quarterback runs? And I would have to say, we don't know because we don't ever have to deal with it. I'm glad we don't have to deal with it, and I never really had an answer. Hey, we can stop this, and here's how we do with this passing game. But now you add the threat of the quarterback taking off and running, and when you have to defend him also, we don't have it regulated yet. Now, they'll figure it out. And these defensive coaches, they will start going to the clinics. They'll talk to the college coaches. We're seeing these college offensive coordinators come in. You're going to see some college defensive coordinators come into the NFL, and that's going to be the answer.
Talk to the listeners, to me as well, if you can share with us the off-season, I guess, research projects might be a best way to talk about it for an NFL head coach. Go back to your coaching days. What was the process, and what were those conversations like with other coaches at different levels to maybe help understand conceptually what you can come up with for new answers to the new stuff that's showing up?
No, you would watch games unfold, and you'd say, boy, that's a neat concept, and who does that well? And then you would start to talk to them. I know Coach Knoll, when I worked for him way back in the 80s, he would invite people in and just brainstorm with them. Hey, what did you do? How did you handle this? What's been the biggest problem you've seen? And he used to love to bring the college coaches in. And he would have us as assistants talk to them and share with them what we're doing. But for him, it was just what you're saying, gathering that information and add a concept here or there, maybe get one play that could be problematic. So I incorporated that, and I always tried to do that. Our off-season program was like the first 3 weeks. Let's make sure we break down everything we do, look at what we did well, what we did poorly, look at the things that hurt us, and now let's start to investigate how we can get better in those areas. Then maybe the second month is, okay, let's look and see who led the league in defense. Let's look at what they did, some of the concepts they had. Who led the league in offense? Who led the league in red zone scoring? And you break all of those down. And I didn't go into the college game as much back then, but every now and then a college concept would catch your fancy, and you'd go try to research it.
It's interesting to watch, Tony, to see how many college guys come to the NFL, because remember, there was a stretch there where it didn't really happen. And Nick Saban had been in the NFL game, went to college, came back to Miami, now ended up back in college. But I wonder if with offenses making that move, and our pal Rodney Harrison said up on the set with us a few weeks back, I don't know if another defensive-minded head coach is going to get hired with the way the trends are going in the NFL. I know you took a little bit of pause to his statement there, but do you think we may see more coaches come from the college game to the NFL game?
I think you will see owners investigate that as they look and see. Now, there haven't been a high number of had that great success. You know, Chip Kelly came in and did really well the first couple of years, got to the playoffs, brought some new concepts, and that was energizing. There hasn't been that coach who's come in really like Dick Vermeil and taken the Philadelphia Eagles to the Super Bowl. That's what would have to happen, I think, for a huge influx. But I think you're going to see that. You're going to see owners say, you know what, yeah, I am going to look at Lincoln Riley and what they're doing there and putting up all those numbers at Oklahoma. It would be worth interviewing him. More than anything, you're going to see these coaches come in at the coordinator or position coach level or quarterback coach. Mark Helfrich was the head coach at Oregon. He coached my son when he was out there. Tremendous offensive mind. Matt Nagy hires him as his offensive coordinator. He never worked with him. He just said, I love what he did with Marcus Mariota, with all these young quarterbacks. I think he can help us tailor this offense and utilize some of the things that Mitch Trubisky can do. And I think you're going to see that more and more.
You know, you mentioned Trubisky. It kind of got me right where I'm going next. If you just take the teams that are in the playoff window for the moment, Mahomes, Deshaun Watson with Houston, Lamar Jackson, if he retains that job in Baltimore, we'll see how that plays out. Goff, we saw play a playoff game last year. We mentioned Trubisky. Even though it feels like he's been around for a while, Dak Prescott doesn't have a ton of experience at this. What kind of advice would you give to some of those young quarterbacks about the games they're about to play and then the games that they could very well be facing in the playoffs, if not for the first time, for maybe the second or third time in their careers?
I would tell them that it's really no different than, you know, you're Texas A&M and you're playing in the Big 12 championship game, Dak Prescott. It's the same type of thing. You have to play and do what you did in the regular season and just continue to fight through it and not think that it's any different. But I think that's unique as you go down the list. It used to be, well, gosh, you know, Peyton Manning, you played 4 or 5 years, you learn this NFL system, and then you get into the playoffs, and then you become that guy who can take your team to the Super Bowl. Phillip Rivers, we saw him last week, and the same thing. You sit for a couple of years behind Drew Brees, and then you elevate your game. Now these young guys are coming in, and they're playing outstanding football right away, and they're getting in these leadership positions, and we're saying, you know, can Deshaun Watson lead his team a long ways into this playoff run? Can Mitch Trubisky do it? And I think that's exciting. I think that's great for the league.
You mentioned some of the veteran guys. We have still the Roethlisbergers and the Bradys and the Rivers and the Brees. Those guys are right in the mix. I want to hit you on Rivers here because that comeback that they had Sunday after Pittsburgh jumped out to the big halftime lead at 23-7 was a little bit of a microcosm of Phillip Rivers' career, except this time they kick the field goal and win the game at the end.
Yeah.
Because we've seen him on the other side of that so many times. What are the traits of Rivers that you're seeing now that, you know, not the most athletic guy that you're going to find, yet still is incredibly effective from inside the pocket?
And highly competitive. To me, that's the word I drum up every time I think of Phillip Rivers. Fight you to the bitter end. I'm going to do whatever it takes to move that ball down the field. I'm going to stand in there, take the hits. I'm going to make the great throw, even if I get behind. I'm not going to give up. My players, my group has confidence in me, and he's just going to fight you all the way. And that's what that was. He fought right to the very end and came through this time.
Tony, we had the chance to do the Thanksgiving night game, which was a blast with me and you and Rodney. We got to join Michelle Tafoya and the rest of the Sunday night group led by Fred Gaudelli and Drew Esikoff and call that game down in New Orleans. And I've always told folks the best part of the job is, of course, the game and the camaraderie, but it's the access that reminds you that when you're in the studio, you have an idea, you can have an opinion, but you don't really know because you don't spend the real investigative time with those folks in their facility. And we got a chance to spend some time with the Saints, but also go to their practice on Wednesday. And one of my takeaways was how impressed both you and Rodney were with what you saw from the Saints practice. What was it that stuck out to you guys who've been to 1,000 football practices at least in your lives each? What stuck out?
I was so excited, Mike, and that really energized me because it reminded me of being back on the practice field myself or with my team. Just the way Sean Payton conducted that day's practice and that workout and how energized Drew Brees reminded me of Peyton Manning. Just going through those last 20 or 30 plays in the red zone, making sure everything was perfect. Sean Payton walking some of the young receivers through. Here's exactly where you need to be split. 1 yard inside the numbers. Not on the inside edge of the numbers, 1 yard inside it, because you need to leave yourself room to get to the corner. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the guy we're going to pick on with this. And talking and walking them through it, and then going full speed and executing it. And then to watch and be ready in some of those situations. Hey, the ball's on the 12-yard line. This is what they were working on yesterday. Here it is. And here's how it worked, exactly like he drew it up. It was really, it kind of took me back a little bit. My third year in the NFL playing for Bill Walsh, we used to have Saturday practices like that. And Bill was just like Sean. Minute details, wanted everyone to understand exactly what their role was on the play, and then when you see it happen on game night, it's just really, really fantastic.
What did you learn from your time with Peyton?
Preparation is so important, and quarterbacks, it's difficult. The game is fast, so if you're playing it through in your mind for the very first time on the field on game day, it's probably too late. You're probably not going to be able to react quick enough. The great ones have played it through in their mind before they ever go out there. Hey, here's the situation, 3rd and 4, this is what they like to do. If I see this, that's telling me this may be coming on defense. I've got to react this way. And that's what makes the game slow down. So that's why they can be so precise and accurate, and that's how Peyton was. Just preparation. Never wanted to see anything happen on the field for the very first time.
And can you speak to the importance of the quarterback, Tony, and his varied relationships in the building? Because fair or not, quarterbacks are judged to a higher standard. They're compensated to a higher standard. They're spoken of at a different level than the volume of words used on other players. How do you take a young guy like a Dak Prescott or a Deshaun Watson, who seems to have all the physical skills, seems to have some of those intangible qualities as well? How do you help mold them into the type of guy who's going to have the chance to be a really good quarterback and a terrific franchise leader for the next, hopefully, decade for those teams?
Right. And so much of that position, Mike, is exactly what you're saying. It's leadership, it's relationships, and it is not necessarily just how well you can throw the ball, how accurate you are, how much you know, but can I function in a way to get everybody to be the best they can be? Can I build relationships with those receivers where I can be demanding, but they still enjoy playing with me? Can I learn how to build those relationships with those offensive linemen who are in they're walking a different walk, they're playing a different game, but I've got to build that. Peyton Manning put his locker right in the middle of the offensive linemen. He wasn't with the skill position guys because he knew he didn't generally spend as much time with those linemen. So in the locker room, before practice, after practice, that's where he wanted to be. Coach-quarterback relationships. We've heard a lot about that in the last few days with the Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers situation, not just with the head coach, but with the offensive coordinator, the quarterback coach, knowing how I'm feeling, what I like, and what is going to really get me going, but also being able to suggest things and say, hey, I'd like to see this, and not do it in a way coming across like you're the spoiled guy, but hey, this is going to help me be better. And just fostering all those relationships, that's what makes a Tom Brady or a Drew Brees. We saw Drew when we were there just talking about these young receivers and how they've energized him, but how he's had to lift them up and help them become pros. And it's different. He's had to learn a little different language and lead a little different way. And that's what the great ones do.
Aaron Rodgers told me that, Tony, when I interviewed him before the Brady-Rodgers matchup that we had on Sunday night. I was in Green Bay, and I asked him, it didn't make it to the feature on the air. I said, what's the difference of being an older leader? And he said, when I came in the league, guys played cards in the locker room. He said that now it's guys playing Fortnite on their phone, and they're playing against each other, and they're 4 lockers away. He said, now I'm not going to jump in there and do that with them, but I need to at least understand what they're doing and be able to communicate with what their feel is. Speaking of Rodgers, when we got the news about Mike McCarthy on the set on Sunday, I know we were all surprised. Someone on social media got back at me, and I understand what they were saying, because I used the word that it was shocking that McCarthy was fired, and not shocking that he was fired at the end of the year or that this situation was headed down that road. But I was surprised at the timing, and perhaps we didn't have the chance to say this on the air, but the Pittsburgh organization from being raised in that organization in your playing days. The Packers and the Steelers always struck me as those two organizations that they would wait it out. They wouldn't cut a guy here before the season was over. I know as a head coach, you were taken aback a bit by the way that happened with Mike McCarthy.
I really was, Mike, and I look at it this way. This was not a guy that you hired 2 years ago, a young guy in his first job, and you hope it worked out, and, hey, we went 2 years and it didn't work out. Then I can live with, okay, I've got to get a head start on this hiring cycle. Maybe we have someone else on the staff we want to look at the last 4 weeks. We'll give it a try. There's a lot of reasons. But I tried to rack my brain and think of a head coach who's won a Super Bowl and that team fired him in the middle of the season. And I just don't remember one, because to me, once you do that, Mike McCarthy, 12 years in your organization, 9 playoffs, brought a Lombardi trophy into your building. At the very least, you go into him and say, Mike, this is what I'm thinking. We're going to let you go at the end of the year. We just think it's time. How do you want to handle this? And maybe he comes out and says, you know what, I'm going to step down now, and, I think this is the right thing for the organization. I'll have a press conference and say, hey, it's time for me. Or I come out and say, at the end of the year, I'm stepping down. I just want everybody to know that now. But it should have been on his terms, or it should have been handled at the end of the year. That, to me, what I thought of was Adam Vinatieri, kicked for me for 6 years, won Super Bowls for us, greatest kicker of all time, and he goes in a slump. And I decide in the middle of the third quarter, you're not kicking anymore. I'm going to have someone else kick and take you off the field. You would never do that. That certain people have garnered more respect than that. And I just thought that Coach McCarthy was in that situation. I understand all the reasons why you might want to make the move, but to me, out of respect for what he's done for you, you handle it a different way.
It's really great perspective. Is the coaching job that you had a decade ago, it's over a decade now, it's changed so much. Is it something that has become almost too difficult to do the way that you did it? I want to say the right way, but certainly you had a distinct approach to how you ran an organization. Can it still be done with the pressure and the scrutiny and the type of players who are in the league today, the way you did it when you were back in Indy and Tampa?
I think it can. I absolutely think it can, but I think it starts at the top, and it starts with how the organization is put together. And you look at the places that win consistently, and New England and Pittsburgh, and how it's done in some of those places, it can still be done that way. And I look at Kansas City, I look at Philadelphia, and some of the, I guess you'd call them old school owners. And I definitely believe it can still be done that way, but it becomes harder because we do have social media. We do have a lot more outlets. We do have a lot more access, a lot more back and forth and ideas coming across right away. And it's harder to hold the fort. It's harder to say, you know what, public opinion may be this way, but this is how we do it, and this is how we're going to do it.
It is a very different time when you think about the communication and the way messages get out. We didn't do it because of the McCarthy firing. We were going to talk about Ben Roethlisberger on the show on Sunday, messaging through his radio show, his receivers, and people get upset when Odell Beckham Jr. does it. They feel like it's held to a different standard because it's Roethlisberger, and then the race issue comes into that. And all of a sudden, you have these controversies that boil up really out of a very small thing, but because things happen at warp speed now, especially in this league, that's the way it goes. All right, let me hit you on a couple of football points on the way out. Let's start in the AFC with a quarter of the season left. Which team, Kansas City, New England, Houston, Pittsburgh, the Chargers, Baltimore, which two teams, not going to pin you down to one, which two do you think have the most of what it takes if they stay healthy to get to that AFC title game?
Well, we always look at the obvious teams, but I'll tell you what, a couple that I like right now, the Chargers and the Texans, just because they're playing complete football. They're running the ball well. Their defenses are healthy and creating havoc. And, they've got young quarterbacks. Houston does. Chargers have an older quarterback, but I just think the energy level there and the confidence that they've had getting on these win streaks, look out for the Chargers and the Texans.
All right, and on the NFC side, we've got those sizzling offenses with the Rams and the Saints. Then we've got those defenses with Chicago and Dallas. Seattle's starting to piece something together. Minnesota made it to the championship game last year. Those are the six for the moment, and the Super Bowl champs are just knocking on the door there, half game behind Minnesota and Philadelphia, of course, with Carolina and Washington, all the 6 and 6s. Give me two out of that NFC pool here going to the final quarter of the season.
I still like those offenses, New Orleans and the Rams. I think home field in the NFC is so critical because it is more, you do have the two very good defenses, Chicago and Dallas, but I just think the teams playing at home are going to be tough to beat because the offenses are so good.
And unless Chicago makes up a couple of games on New Orleans, somebody's going to have to go to the Coliseum and beat the Rams at home, or to the Dome and beat New Orleans at home, and pull an upset there.
And that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, you're right.
It's going to be difficult.
And then that would set up the Saints and the Rams playing in the championship game in L.A. for the moment, but they've got that one-game lead, and New Orleans has the heads-to-head, so that makes even that fascinating, Tony. It feels like almost nobody's going to be in position to take their foot off the gas until maybe week 17, which is kind of cool.
And I'm so excited about our game Sunday night because New Orleans was in that situation. Hey, we're going on the road, playing a great defense on the road, and we're kind of in the driver's seat. We've got to maintain, and they couldn't do it. They ran into a defensive buzzsaw. Now, the Rams are in first place, and can we keep the lead? We're going to a great defensive team on the road. Can we play well enough to win that game? And I think it's early to say, but if the Rams win this game, I think they're going to be tough to beat.
Cool. All right. I like that. How many times do you think the folks in L.A. with the Rams have been on the Weather Channel's website checking for the weather on Sunday night? I've done it once a day, every day.
Already.
Yeah,
I was looking at it and trying to, formulate my game plan if I'm Matt Nagy and the Bears. And I'm really wondering right now, if he can play and do what Dallas did, because Dallas said, you know what, we're going to slow the game down on offense. We'll throw some balls on the outside, but we're going to run it and pound it and keep Drew Brees off the field and trust that our defense can win a game. And can Chicago do that? I think they've got the defense to do it. Do they trust their defense enough to say, you know what, we'll play a game maybe a little differently than we usually play on offense, and that's how we're going to win defensively this week. I'm just curious to see how this plays out.
And the first thing that always comes to my mind with that is Super Bowl 25 with the Giants against Buffalo, and Buffalo's high-powered offense there in Tampa, and the Giants had 40 minutes of time of possession. And it's a reminder, and it's why I love sitting next to you and watching those games on Sunday. Rodney's on my other side. I'm surrounded by these two Super Bowl champions, Tony in the Hall of Fame, Rodney should be and hopefully will be someday, that everything we think is new and exciting, it's happened a bunch of times already in the league.
It has. And, we always kind of laugh at Matt Nagy's plate chart where he says, be you.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, that's one of the things I'm going to talk about Sunday night. He might have to not be himself Sunday night to give them the best chance to win.
I love it.
He might have to say, you know what, we're playing an offense that is high-powered, but our defense can handle them if we give them some help, if we don't put them in bad situations, if we take some time off the clock. So maybe I might not need to be myself tonight. Maybe I'm going to have to step out of that to really win this one game.
I thought of you, Tony, as we wrap up. When Philadelphia is up 7, I see them score the touchdown up 7. I said, he's going to go for 2. I know he is. and as soon as they kind of come out of the replays and I see the offense on the field, I said, I wonder what Tony's thinking right now, because we're of the same ilk.
No, I wouldn't, but they make it, and, everything is good. But sometimes I think these analytics it's all great in a laboratory. Hey, this is what it should be percentage-wise. This is the play. But you still have to evaluate who you're playing and what type of score it is. I will go back to the Thursday night game, Saints at Dallas.
Yes.
And they're down there early at the 1-yard line, and they go for it on 4th and goal and don't make it. And, yes, analytics may say most of the time, but you're playing in Dallas, you know it's going to be a low-scoring game. And 3 points to me is so critical at that point, and they didn't take it, and the analytics may say they were right, but I don't know if the analytics take into account the situation and the team that you're playing.
That's right. See, the up 7 going for 2, I like, because I don't know if Jay Gruden on the other side, if they get a touchdown, if he's going to go for the 2 and the win at that point when they're down there. So the worst you're going to get is you're up 7 in overtime. This really put them behind the 8 ball with the timing of the game. It's a fun one. I'm going to convince you on that one. I think that's the right one. But
well, I'm always, I guess, thinking like a defensive guy. If I get up 8, they've got to score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion against me. I'll put my defense out there every time with 2 shots. Yeah.
I love it. The perspective is always appreciated, and I hope the listeners get a chance to understand why we laugh so much when we're on the air. We have such a good time talking about all this stuff and the serious stuff too every Sunday in the NFL with Tony Dungy, as wonderful a man as you can ever imagine. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Safe travels to Connecticut, and I will see you up there Sunday morning.
Thank you, Mike. Looking forward to seeing you Sunday.
Our thanks to Coach Dungy and to Alex Hardy, as always, for helping coordinate this whole deal. We hope you enjoyed the download. Hope you have a great week, keeping it as simple as possible in the hectic holiday times. And we'll check back in with you next week for the podcast right here. Thanks for downloading it. Take care. Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.